If you told me that night would be the last time I'd see my friends, I would not have believed you. We were just 5 friends, laughing, telling stories around a campfire. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. We'd done things like this before, and it always ended with jokes, drinks, and a late-night scramble to our sleeping bags. But something felt different this time. The voice in my head takes me back, a long time ago, back to that night, back to the fire, to my friends. It all started innocently enough, like every other camping trip. There was Anna, daring as always, who could never resist a good adventure. Mark, loud and full of jokes, could break any silence with his booming laugh. Alina, the quiet one, but her dark sense of humor kept us on our toes. And then there was Lily, the one who kept us all together, the heart of the group. We'd met during college, but it wasn't until one night when we were hanging out in our favorite spot, debating about what to do for the weekend, that Lily suggested something different. "Let's get away, just for a night." "A camping trip in the woods," she said, her eyes lighting up at the thought. "Anyone in?" Mark grinned, tossing a look around the room. And just like that, we were set. 5 of us, the perfect number. Mark, Nick, Anna, Alina, and Lily. The plan was simple: get away from the noise, the chaos, the city. By evening, we were at the edge of a forest, near a stream, setting up tents. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and the stars had started to poke through the dark canopy. We sat around the campfire, the crackling flames filling the silence as we swapped stories. Then Anna, in her usual mischievous tone, spoke up. "It's spooky out here. How about we tell ghost stories?" Mark elbowed me. "You scared, Nick?" I chuckled nervously, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling in my chest. "Nah," I muttered. But when Anna started her ghost story, I wasn't ready for what came next. Anna leaned in closer to the fire, her face lit by the flames. She always had this knack for storytelling, her voice dropping just enough to pull you in. The rest of us sat quietly, waiting for her to begin. "This forest," she said, her eyes glinting with mischief, "has a secret. There's a tree out here, an ancient one, that's unlike any other. They call it the hanging tree." I shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the dark silhouettes of the trees around us. I didn't want to admit it, but her words were already getting to me. "Years ago," Anna continued, her voice soft but steady, "they say people were hanged on this tree. Criminals, witches, even innocent people accused of terrible things. The branches would creak under the weight of their bodies as they swung in the wind. And even after they stopped using the tree for executions, strange things kept happening." She paused, letting the crackling fire fill the silence. I could feel my heart beating faster, and when I glanced at Mark, he was grinning, probably waiting to crack a joke. But even he stayed quiet. "They say," Anna went on, "that the tree isn't just a tree anymore. It's alive, cursed by the spirits of those who died there. If you get too close, the branches might reach out for you. Wrap around your neck." And she made a choking gesture, tilting her head to the side dramatically. "All right, that's enough," I muttered, trying to sound annoyed, but my voice wavered a bit. Anna smirked. "Scared already, Nick?" Anna leaned in closer to the fire, her face lit by the flames. She always had this knack for storytelling, her voice dropping just enough to pull you in. The rest of us sat quietly, waiting for her to begin. "This forest," she said, her eyes glinting with mischief, "has a secret. There's a tree out here, an ancient one, that's unlike any other. They call it the hanging tree." I shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the dark silhouettes of the trees around us. I didn't want to admit it, but her words were already getting to me. "Years ago," Anna continued, her voice soft but steady, "they say people were hanged on this tree. Criminals, witches, even innocent people accused of terrible things. The branches would creak under the weight of their bodies as they swung in the wind. And even after they stopped using the tree for executions, strange things kept happening." She paused, letting the crackling fire fill the silence. I could feel my heart beating faster, and when I glanced at Mark, he was grinning, probably waiting to crack a joke. But even he stayed quiet. They say, Anna went on, that the tree isn't just a tree anymore. It's alive, cursed by the spirits of those who died there. If you get too close, the branches might reach out for you. Wrap around your neck. And she made a choking gesture, tilting her head to the side dramatically. All right, that's enough, I muttered, trying to sound annoyed, but my voice wavered a bit. Anna smirked. Scared already, Nick, she teased. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop looking at the trees. Were they always this close? They say if you hear the sound of branches creaking when there's no wind, it means the tree has chosen you, she finished, her tone dead serious. And if it does, well, you'll never leave this forest. Mark laughed, breaking the tension. All right, Anna. You win. You've officially creeped us all out. The fire crackled, sending sparks flying into the night as Anna stood up, brushing off her jeans. All right, I'll be back in a minute, Anna said casually, turning toward the trees. Nature calls. I nodded, not thinking much of it. After all, we were in the middle of the woods, and it was normal for someone to take a break and step off to the side. But a few minutes passed, and the stillness of the forest started to feel heavier, more oppressive. The firelight danced, casting strange shadows on the faces around me. I glanced around, feeling the growing unease tighten in my chest. Suddenly, I heard a strange, snappy sound, like broken bones, along with a noise as if someone was strangled and wanted to scream but couldn't. Where was Anna? She hadn't been gone this long before, and something about the way the others were talking, it felt different. As I looked across the circle, my eyes settled on the spot where Anna had been sitting. There was someone else there now. A man. He was sitting at the edge of the firelight, just on the other side of Mark, his posture relaxed, almost too casual. His clothes were dark, too dark for the night, and his face, well, it looked like it was made of wood, his hands and legs, everything was like wood. But the strangest part? No one was reacting. I stared at him, my heart beginning to race. I was sure there was only 4 of us when Anna got up. And yet, here was this stranger, someone who hadn't been there just moments ago. I glanced around the group, but no one else seemed to notice. They were all talking, laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that the 5th person had somehow changed. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask who he was, but I hesitated. Maybe I was just seeing things. Maybe it was the dark playing tricks on me. I turned my attention back to the fire, my mind racing. Who is that? But before I could make sense of it, Alina cleared her throat, breaking my train of thought. Well, since Anna's off doing her thing, I guess it's my turn, she said, her voice breaking the tension that had settled over me. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine as if she knew what I was thinking. But I wasn't in the mood for more creepy stories. I just wanted to figure out who this new guy was. Alina leaned in closer to the fire, her face illuminated by the flames. She always had this way of telling stories, drawing everyone in with that low, mysterious tone. We sat in a tight circle around the campfire, the forest around us alive with its own sounds. This is a story I heard from an old man in town, Alina began, her voice almost a whisper. He swore it was true, that his brother saw it with his own eyes out in these woods. There's something out here, something that hunts in the dark. A headless monster. A shiver crawled up my spine at her words. I glanced over at the others, none of us were laughing anymore. The fire flickered as if to punctuate her story. It said that the monster was once a man, a hermit who lived alone out here. He was twisted, they say, and he had a terrible secret. He would kidnap travelers, take them deep into the forest, and Alina paused, letting the silence stretch. Her eyes locked with mine, and I could feel the weight of her words. He would rip their heads off. I swallowed, trying to shake the uncomfortable chill creeping in. I couldn't quite laugh it off this time. The trees around us seemed to stretch longer in the darkness, shadows twisting unnaturally. The thing is, Alina went on, he didn't just do it for food or sport. He believed that by taking their heads, he could gain their strength, their power. But one day, someone finally came upon his trail. They caught him. When they found him, there was nothing left but his body, headless, of course, with another headless corpse standing beside it. It was as if the monster's spirit had never left. The fire crackled louder in the silence, and I shifted uncomfortably, glancing over at Mark, but he was staring out into the forest with a distant look. His face had gone pale. They say that if you're out here, alone, and you hear footsteps behind you, you'd better not turn around. Because if you do, you'll see it, standing there, with no head, no face. Just dark, empty sockets staring at you. It comes for you, and you'll never hear it coming. A nervous laugh escaped me, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. Come on, Alina. You're messing with us. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at me, her expression serious, her voice now barely audible. And the worst part is, if you see it, you're next. No one ever sees it twice. It takes you, and you're gone. Forever. A cold shiver ran through me. I could feel the weight of the story press down on my chest. I wanted to laugh it off, but something told me it wasn't going to be that easy. Just then, I realized something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Anna still hadn't come back. My eyes flickered nervously to the path she had gone down earlier, her departure now feeling odd. I hadn't noticed how much time had passed. Everyone else seemed uneasy too, but Alina, of all people, noticed it first. All right, I'll go check on Anna, Alina said suddenly, her voice breaking through the tension. She's been gone for a while now. Without another word, she stood up and brushed off her pants. I'll just make sure she's okay. Stay here. Before anyone could protest, she turned and walked briskly toward the woods, disappearing into the dark path where Anna had gone. I sat frozen for a moment, my mind racing. The firelight flickered as the wind rustled the trees, but something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that Alina walking into the woods alone, after the story she had just told, wasn't the best idea. Don't worry, she'll be fine, Mark muttered, his voice shaky. I nodded, though I didn't feel convinced. The uneasy silence hung heavy in the air, and all I could do was stare into the dark woods where Alina had gone, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Alina had been gone for only a few minutes when the sound pierced the night, a scream, sharp and chilling. It was unmistakably Alina's voice, high-pitched and filled with panic. The air around us seemed to still for a moment, the trees holding their breath. My heart skipped a beat. But instead of the tense silence I expected, Mark and Lily burst into laughter, completely unfazed. Mark, his voice full of amusement, turned to us. Guys, seriously, he said, shaking his head. It's just Anna and Alina pulling some prank. They're trying to scare us. Let's not make a big deal out of it. I know they're up to something. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Alina's scream had been blood-curdling, and he was brushing it off like it was just a joke. Lily, still giggling, nodded in agreement. Yeah, they probably found a way to mess with us. Maybe they've been planning this all along. I sat there, my mind racing. That scream, it didn't sound like a prank. It sounded real. But Mark and Lily's carefree laughter started to gnaw at me. Were they really that confident? Or was something else going on? Mark, clearly eager to lighten the mood, leaned forward, grinning. All right, if we're gonna sit around the campfire like this, might as well enjoy it. Let me tell you guys a spooky story. He adjusted himself, leaning back against a log, clearly trying to gather everyone's attention. But as he spoke, something out of the corner of my eye made my heart skip a beat. There, sitting calmly by the side of the fire, was a new figure. I hadn't seen him approach, and no one seemed to acknowledge his presence. He was seated in the same spot where Alina had been only moments before, just beside the creepy wooden figure. The man wore a hooded jacket, his face hidden in shadow, but something about him made my blood run cold. The eerie figure, the one who had been sitting across from us, was now accompanied by this mysterious person, who was completely unnoticeable to the others. His presence was like a silent stain in the midst of our laughter. Who the hell is that? I thought, my pulse quickening. But before I could voice the question, Mark's voice broke through again. All right, he said, grinning. Let's get spooky. This one's about a witch who lived in these very woods. Mark leaned in closer, his face lit by the flickering campfire, casting shadows that danced across his features. He looked around, as if to make sure everyone's attention was on him, then began, his voice deepening for effect. This story is about a witch. A witch who lives deep in these woods. The kind of place where even the trees don't dare to whisper. You've all heard of her, or at least, the stories. Some say she's been here for centuries, keeping the forest her own. She hunts anyone who dares to wander too far into the woods, who disturbs the peace of the place. He paused, glancing toward the dark silhouette of the pond not far from the campfire. The reflection of the trees on the water seemed unnaturally still, the moonlight barely touching its surface. That pond over there, Mark pointed dramatically in its direction, that's where she lives. In a small hut by the water. Not far from here. And trust me, you don't want to get close to it. You see, she doesn't like noise. Not one bit. People who shout, who laugh, or even make a lot of noise around her home. They don't come back. Mark lowered his voice, leaning in even closer, as if telling a secret. She hears everything. Even the slightest sound in her domain. And when she hears you, she comes. She doesn't just scare you off. Oh no. She silences you. Forever. He let that sink in, letting the tension build as he stared into the fire, watching it crackle. The air around us felt heavier, and for a moment, the night seemed to press in closer. Some say, Mark continued, eyes wide with mock terror, that when she catches someone, she does something terrible. She makes them mute. But not just mute. She takes their voices entirely. And not just their voices, every sound they make, every breath, every step. Silence becomes their prison, and they are never heard again. Some say their souls are trapped in that silence, forever lost. He looked up, casting another quick glance at the pond. So if you hear strange sounds out there in the woods, rustling in the trees or whispers on the wind, know this, it could be her. And it's already too late. A shiver ran down my spine, and I glanced at the others around the fire. But before I could say anything, Mark grinned again, clearly enjoying the effect his story had on us. Anyway, he said, standing up and brushing off his pants. I think that's enough spooky talk for tonight. He stretched and yawned theatrically. I need to call my mom and say goodnight, and I'll go check on Anna and Alina. Make sure they're not planning any more pranks. As he walked toward the darkness of the woods, his voice echoed one last time through the trees. Stay here, guys. Don't wander off. I'll bring the girls back soon. And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the shadows, leaving us to wonder if the witch really was just a story, or if she was closer than we thought. I watched Mark walk off into the dark, his voice fading as he went to call his mom and check on Alina and Anna. Lily was teasing me about being scared, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, I heard it, a scream. Mark's voice, frantic and pleading, I'm sorry. I won't disturb you again. But then, silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Lily didn't seem to notice, laughing off my unease. That's when I saw her. The woman. Sitting in Mark's seat, wearing a pointed hat and a dark cloak, her face hidden in shadow. My heart froze. She wasn't alone, two strange figures, the ones who had taken Anna and Alina's seats, sat with her, motionless. No one else seemed to notice. I tried to speak to Lily, but she kept going on about how Mark was probably just messing with us. I watched as Lily tossed her hair and stood up. I'm feeling too hot, she said, glancing at the pond. I think I'll take a dive. Cool off in that cold water. I opened my mouth to protest, but she waved me off with a grin. Relax, Nick. I'm the best swimmer in college. I'll be fine. I didn't like the look of that pond. The darkness around it felt off. My stomach twisted into knots. Lily, don't, I said, but she was already heading toward the water, her figure disappearing into the night. I was alone now, and everything felt wrong. The campfire crackled, but it felt distant, as though I could hear it from another world. I glanced nervously at the group. There was the wooden beast, sitting eerily still, its bark-like skin and the branches sticking out of its back giving it the look of something alive, but not human. The hooded figure still hadn't moved, its face hidden completely beneath the cloak. And the witch, her grin far too wide, her eyes too knowing. I shifted uncomfortably, my body tensing. My heart started to race. The night felt suffocating, as if something was closing in on me. And then I heard it. Screech. Lily's scream. My blood ran cold. I froze. She was just messing around, right? It had to be a joke, a prank. But there was no laughter, no follow-up. I tried to shake off the panic creeping into my chest. I glanced back at the group. They were all standing now, perfectly still, silent. I looked toward the witch, and then, before I could even react, she reached out, her hands snapping around my wrist like a vice. I gasped as she pulled me toward her, her eyes gleaming with something dark. "It's my turn to tell a story now," she hissed, her voice colder than the night air. I struggled, my heart hammering. "Let go of me." I tried to pull free, but her grip was like iron. She whispered, almost casually, 5 friends came to this forest, making nuisances of themselves, breaking branches, loitering waste, cutting trees for their fire. They thought they were just telling stories, having fun, but one by one, they disappeared. "Now, it's your turn, Nick." The words were like ice in my veins. My heart pounded harder as a wave of panic crashed over me. I couldn't stay here. I had to run. I wrenched my arm free and sprinted, my legs moving before my brain could even catch up. I wasn't thinking, just reacting. But then, thud, I tripped. My face slammed into the ground, and I scrambled to get up, my hands clawing at the dirt beneath me. That's when I saw it. A massive crocodile, its dark eyes gleaming in the moonlight, had its jaws wrapped around something. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't look away. A human leg. The leg of someone. I don't know who. I couldn't think. The croc's eyes locked onto mine, cold and predatory. I froze, unable to move as its massive jaws slowly opened wider. My body moved on its own. I stumbled backward, trying to push myself to my feet. And then, thud, the hooded figure stepped forward. I thought I might have a chance to get away, but then it pulled back its hood. There was nothing. No head. Just darkness. A hollow void. I turned, desperate to escape. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I had to run. I had to get out. But my legs didn't listen. They couldn't move fast enough. And then I saw it, the massive crocodile again, waiting for me, its mouth wide open, its jaws glistening with saliva. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I turned and ran, my body on autopilot as I fled through the dark, my heart pounding louder than anything. But the more I ran, the more I saw. The bodies. The nightmare around me. Anna's body hanging like a rag doll. Alina's headless corpse. Mark's lifeless body, the single leg in that crocodile's mouth could be off Lily. An eerie, twisted reminder of the horrors in this forest. And then I heard it, a bone-chilling scream. I looked up. The witch's voice echoed in my mind. "It's your turn now, Nick." I didn't stop running, my breath ragged, heart hammering in my chest. The forest seemed endless, every shadow a threat, every sound a warning. My legs ached, but I couldn't slow down, not after what I'd seen. Finally, the trees thinned, and I stumbled onto the highway, collapsing near my car. For a brief moment, I felt relief, the safety of civilization just within reach. But then I looked back. At the edge of the forest, silhouetted against the trees, were the spirits of my friends. Anna, Alina, Mark, and Lily, their lifeless forms now glowing faintly under the moonlight. They stood there, staring at me. And then, they waved. Not friendly, not welcoming. Just slow, deliberate waves. And I swear I heard their voices, faint and distorted, calling out to me. "Come back, Nick. You forgot to tell your story." I jumped into my car, fumbling with the keys, refusing to look back. The engine roared to life, and I sped away, leaving behind the forest, the fire, and the horrors I'd barely escaped. But even now, I can't shake the feeling. I escaped the forest, but something followed me.